The central question that's been nagging at fans for years now is this: can he actually be defeated? Not in some comic book one-punch knockout way, but in a way that feels earned within the rules of the show. The Boys has always been about consequences, about how power corrupts and how ordinary people, or semi-ordinary people with a little compound V in their system, might actually stand a chance against someone who seems untouchable. So let's break this down step by step. No hype, no wild speculation that ignores what we've actually seen on screen, just a calm look at what the show has set up, what the characters have been building toward, and what the internet's smartest fan theories are saying. First, we have to understand why Homelander feels nearly unstoppable, because if we're going to talk about defeating him, we need to be honest about the mountain we're trying to climb. His powers are the obvious starting point. Superhuman strength that lets him casually toss people through walls or crush skulls without trying. Durability that means bullets bounce off him like they're nothing, and even high-powered explosives barely scratch the surface. Flight, he can hover, accelerate, change direction mid-air like it's nothing. And the heat vision, that's the one that sticks with you. Precise enough to cauterize a wound or melt through steel, hot enough to take out entire structures. We've seen him use it casually, almost like an afterthought, and that's what makes it scary. It's not a last resort weapon, it's just another tool in his kit. But it's not just the physical stuff. Homelander's real strength is psychological. He dominates every room he's in, not because people are physically weaker, but because they've been conditioned to fear him. The public loves him, or at least they did for a long time, because Vought has spent decades selling the idea that he's the ultimate protector. He's on cereal boxes. He's doing interviews where he talks about family values while hiding the monster underneath. That social and political control is huge. Even when people start to suspect the truth, there's this inertia. Who's going to be the first to call out the guy who can level a building if he gets annoyed? And traditional methods? They've already failed spectacularly. Guns don't work, bombs don't work, even other soups have struggled. Remember how Maeve went up against him in Season 3? She got some good hits in, but it took everything she had, and she still ended up losing an eye and nearly dying. Soldier Boy, who was hyped as this legendary figure from the past, managed to actually hurt him in a fight, but even then, Homelander walked away. The show's been very clear. You can't just overpower him. Anyone who tries a straight-up brawl is playing his game, and he's been playing it his whole life, or at least since he was a kid in that lab. What makes him different from, say, a Superman analog in other stories is that there's no obvious kryptonite, no magic rock, no secret weakness that's been teased for seasons. The writers have been smart about that. They made him feel like the final boss, not because he's invincible, but because every possible counter has a massive downside. Start with the mental instability. He's not just arrogant, he's fragile in a way that feels uncomfortably human. He was raised in a lab, tested like a product, never given real affection. That need for validation is constant. We see it in the way he stares at himself in the mirror, in the way he craves applause from crowds, in the way he gets genuinely rattled when someone doesn't worship him. Remember the scene where he talks about wanting to be loved rather than feared? That's not just a throwaway line. It's the core of who he is. His ego is tied directly to his public image. Take that away and he starts to unravel. We've seen glimpses of it when Starlight starts chipping away at his reputation, when the truth about some of his actions leaks out. He doesn't just get angry, he gets desperate, and desperate Homelander is unpredictable. Then there's the family stuff, especially with Ryan. His son is probably the one thing that can actually get under his skin in a way nothing else can. Homelander sees Ryan as an extension of himself, the perfect legacy, the one person who might finally understand him. But that also makes Ryan a massive vulnerability. If Ryan ever turns against him, or if something happens to Ryan because of Homelander's own actions, it could break him in a way that no physical fight ever could. We've already seen how protective he is, how he switches from cold calculation to almost paternal warmth when Ryan is involved. It's the closest thing he has to a real emotion. There are also hints at possible biological weaknesses tied to Compound V. The show hasn't spelled it out completely, but we've seen that soups aren't immortal. They age, slowly, they can be worn down, and there are things like the soup-killing virus that was introduced later on. Homelander was dosed as a baby, so maybe there's something about long-term exposure that could be exploited. It's not a guarantee, but it's the kind of grounded speculation the show loves, not some random new power, but something already in the universe. One of the most emotionally charged theories, and the one that feels most true to the show's themes, is that Ryan is ultimately the one who defeats Homelander. Not in some explosive superhero-style showdown, but in a quiet, heartbreaking moment that's been building since we first met the kid. Ryan carries the same powers as his father, the strength, the flight, the heat vision, but he also carries something Homelander never had, a conscience shaped by Becca's love and the normal life she tried to give him. Throughout the series, we've watched Ryan pull away from Homelander's grooming, seen the fear and confusion in his eyes every time his dad pushes too hard. The theory goes that in the final season, after everything comes to a head, maybe after Homelander crosses one final line, or after Ryan finally learns the full truth about what happened to his mother, the boy makes a choice. In a private, almost intimate confrontation, Ryan looks his father in the eyes and unleashes everything he's been holding back. It wouldn't be rage driving him, it would be sorrow, the kind of deep, exhausted rejection that only a child can deliver to a parent who never deserved the title. Homelander, stripped to this public adoration and facing the one person whose approval actually mattered, wouldn't even fight back properly. He'd just break. And in that moment, Ryan wouldn't just kill the monster, he'd end the cycle of abuse that created him. It's messy, it's painful, and it feels like the only ending the boys would actually deliver. The show has always been about how power without accountability destroys people. Homelander isn't going to go out like a traditional villain with a big speech. It'll be messy, unsatisfying in some ways, and probably leave some questions unanswered, but that's what makes it feel real. What do you think? Is Ryan the key? Would you rather see Homelander depowered and humiliated, or taken out in a blaze of glory? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm actually reading them. And if you're new, hit subscribe for more deep dives into the boys, the comics, and whatever else is worth talking about.